Hey, welcome back. Let's cover some foundational basics, which will include your primary target areas before we get to the striking techniques. The first foundational basic is to breathe. When we experience high levels of stress, our natural reaction is to hold our breath. You need oxygen flowing to your brain, so make sure that you breathe. The time you spend in mindfulness meditation will absolutely help here. The second foundational basic is your protective guard that we introduced in the last chapter. The most important part of your body is your head, and it requires diligent protection. One good shot to the head and your defense may be over. The guard is set up by bringing both of your arms up in front of your head, opening your hands and facing your palms out. A common question is, why don't we form fists instead? A physical self-defense situation is chaotic and dynamic. You aren't trading punches with your aggressor. You're on constant offense while trying to reduce your opponent's ability to strike through limb control. Open hands can fulfill both goals, while closed fists can only accomplish the first. When you have your guard up, dip your head slightly and lean forward a bit. This will enable your guard to cover some of your middle chest and your abdomen area. This is where your arms always need to come back to after a technique. As you'll see in your form later in the course, your guard is a constant throughout. Your third foundational basic is your stance. When we walk normally, our stance is narrow, as it's the most efficient way to walk. However, that's dangerous in a self-defense situation, as you have no left to right balance or mobility. Your forward balance is great, which makes sense. You're casually walking in a forward direction after all. But you need to be ready to shift or be shifted to any direction in a self-defense situation. As such, you need to be in a stance that best supports 360-degree mobility. So you need to keep your feet shoulder width apart, front to back, and side to side. And this gives you a better foundation to handle rapid or unpredictable directional changes and stay on your feet. Staying on your feet is extremely important. Many fights go to the ground, and it's the last place you want to be for several reasons. One, it's a different kind of fight. And although almost all of the techniques you'll be learning in this course can be used when you're fighting on the ground, the solid surface beneath your feet that is of a benefit when you're fighting upright can be a detriment when you're on the ground. That solid surface has now eliminated almost 180 degrees of available space for you to shift your fight to or to run. Also, being on the ground reduces your visibility, and you have no idea if your aggressor has a buddy just out of sight waiting to jump in if needed or desired. That may still happen when you're on your feet, but being upright gives you a much better chance of seeing him and to be able to react. So use this stance to decrease the chances of the fighting going to the ground. Let's finish up with the foundational basics by reviewing your primary target areas. As I explained in the chapter overview, not all areas of the body are equally vulnerable to physical attack, and you want to make sure every opportunity available to stop an attacker is used optimally. Some of these target areas may make you wince, but you must remember that the aggressor facing you means you serious bodily harm, maybe lethal harm. This needs to be considered in the ethical decision process we talked about in the prior preparation stage. So let's go top to bottom. The head is your primary target area, and it offers several vulnerable targets. The orbital socket around the eye is fragile, mostly on the side. The eye itself is a great target that, when hit correctly, can immediately stop the altercation. The lower nose is a great target as well. Done right, strikes to the nose will result in shattering the lower part of the nose, which is cartilage, and lacerating the sinuses inside. Sinuses are full of blood vessels, and lacerations will cause a lot of bleeding and discomfort. Remember, it's important to know that exposure to blood is likely as you mount an effective preemptive or counterattack. Know that and get okay with it now so you don't negatively react to it when it happens. The front and side of the neck are effective targets as well. It's common for someone to lose all balance or even consciousness when they receive a powerful strike to the side of the neck. A strike to the front of the neck can also be a game changer in many ways. With an accurate strike, the windpipe can partially or fully collapse. The former will cause a major amount of distress to your aggressor, and it's likely that they will disengage immediately. The latter can actually kill him. So here's the first target area where we need to start remember the decisions we made in that ethical thought process in the earlier lesson. Does your moral compass allow you to take that lethal action when it's necessary? Only you can answer that question, but you got to answer it before you're faced with it. As a reminder, it's also important to know what your local laws are regarding lethal force. The space where the back of the neck ends and the bottom of the skull begins is another great target. A good strike here can jar the connection between the brain and the spinal cord and essentially cause a reboot of the aggressor's nervous system, giving you the time you need to safely escape. This too can also be a lethal strike. The collarbone is a good target as it breaks fairly easily and is a painful injury. Fingers only bend a few specific ways. Bending them violently in the other direction, it hurts, especially when they break. Moving down the body, a punch to the liver can be very painful. The liver is located just below your aggressor's right breast. If you're behind your aggressor, the kidneys are also painful when impacted. They're located just above the pelvic bone on the right and left side of the spine. The groin is a common and effective target on both men and women. Knees, like fingers, only bend in specific directions. As such, a strike to the knee in any other direction can take your aggressor down to the ground quickly. The instep, which is the top of the foot, is full of small bones, and they're easy to break with an accurate strike. Last is the Achilles tendon, which is the vertical rope-like part at the rear of the ankle, just above the heel. A violent strike to this tendon is very painful. Okay, those are your primary target areas. The other areas of the body run too high a risk of being too difficult to inflict damage or pain, and you can't bet on having more than one or maybe two opportunities to strike. There are 8 techniques that you're going to learn that are broken up into 4 lessons. After each lesson, I'll provide a separate video that contains all of the basics from the previous and current technique lesson so you can train with me outside of class through all of what you've learned. Okay, now we're ready to move on to our striking techniques, which start in the next lesson. I'll see you there.